So let's start then. Most of you know me already, but my name is Michał Purzyński and I am BAME Community Engagement Officer working for Community Council for Somerset, where we run a project called Somerset Diverse Communities. And at the beginning, I would like to let you know that the event is going to be recorded and will be available on our social media. So please make sure that you follow us on Facebook or on YouTube. I do believe that Ginny or Jasna in a second they will paste the links, so you can follow them, you can save them, and by doing that you're going to be updated about our future events and initiatives. I would like to ask you to mute your microphones. It will help the guest speakers to focus on what they are talking about, and instead of that, use chat for comments and questions, where Alisa, Jasna and Ginny will be happy to help you. And from time to time, Alisa will update us what is going on chat. So I do encourage you to use it. Please let us know what would you like to see in the future, what there is, whether there's anything specific that you would like to be involved in. Let us know how we should use tonight's energy in order to build a better society. And the event should last not longer than 2 hours. So each of guest speakers has more or less 5 minutes. So please don't get me wrong if I will intervene and remind you about time if we want to finish by 8 o'clock. And you know, I do encourage you to chat once again, because that's the time, it's giving us an opportunity to exchange our contacts and make new networks. And perhaps I do believe there's lots of great people tonight with us, and I do believe that you are able to provide a great projects in Somerset and maybe even beyond. So please introduce yourself to other people on chat, exchange your contact details if you want. Obviously, let us know what would you like to create, do, organize, and by all means contact us, Bridgwater Together Group or Somerset Diverse Communities. All of the contact details you find on chat in a second. And the most important thing is please respect each other. So we are aware that it might be a sensitive subject, and we are allowed to have opinions. So please be conscious of the language that you use, and you need to also be in mind that lots of people, most of the people needs to be brave in order to come join us today and talk about their personal experiences. And I do appreciate that. It's really important, and I'm really grateful to you guys for doing that. And before we start, I would like to thank Somerset Community Foundation, who are supporting this event via Hinkley Point C Community Fund. And as I've mentioned, I would like to most of all thank you, the participants, that because of without you we wouldn't be able to organize it. And so Somerset Diverse Communities and Bridgwater together decided to provide this platform and organize tonight's event. So I won't tell you more about the reason, and instead of that, I would like to start with introducing Phil Shepherd from Bridgwater Together Group, and I do believe Phil will tell us a little bit about Bridgwater Together and the reason why we decided to organize tonight's event. Phil?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Hi, everyone.
Yeah.
Bridgwater Together. Yeah, I mean, most people probably know a little bit about it. We've been going about 4 years, and prior to the pandemic, we really focused on one annual event a year, which would be held at the engine room, working very much in conjunction with the town council and in Bridgwater, and with Unite Union and the Bridgwater and District Trades Unions Council, all of whom have long supported it. Once the pandemic came in, we thought we'd try and do stuff online, and it's kind of evolved that we're doing effectively a monthly event now online, and this is basically this month's event, but hugely supported and enabled through Michal's efforts and Somerset diverse communities with whom we work really closely as that has gained strength. So that's really the story. What I should say though is that Bridgwater Together is an informal group. We do have a constitution, but it's an open group that anyone is free to come and be involved in, and it basically is about celebrating diversity, not just ethnic diversity, but all forms of diversity in our communities. And we meet quite frequently. We meet monthly, really, and those meetings are open. The next one is on the 8th, which is, I think, Tuesday. Am I right? No, sorry, not the 8th. Can't be the 8th. It must be the... when is the next meeting? Just talk among yourselves. I've forgotten when the next meeting is. I think it's this Tuesday on the 22nd at 6 o'clock. If people are interested, do email me, phil@somersetfilm.com, or get in touch with Michal, or put it on the chat now that you'd like to be invited if you're not already. We do have a mailing list of about 90 people that I send stuff out to regularly. You're welcome to come on that list and join us. So come and be involved. Come and help us decide what the next event will be, we know the date of the next event, which is the 17th of October. As yet, we don't know the content. So looking forward to talking to you. That's it really, Michal. Thank you.
And Phil, I do believe that you prepared a short film about Bridgwater Together.
Oh, there's a 30-second sting. If you've got it there, do play it, because it welcomes us. It urges people to get involved in about 9 or 10 different languages. So, and it only lasts about 30 seconds. So.
Okay then.
Наш Bridgwater, забудьте се.
Bridgwater заедно, включите се.
Bridgwater Together, junta-te a nós.
Bridgwater zusammen, machen Sie mit. Bridgwater Together, Bridgwater вместе, принимайте участие.
Bridgwater Together, zapraszamy.
Bridgwater, juntos, asociémonos.
Lovely, that was great. I do encourage you to contact Phil if you would like to find out more or be involved in other projects organized by Bridgwater Together group. They are really supportive, open and friendly bunch of people, and during the COVID-19 they've been very active, and as you probably already know, they organize a number of different projects. So once again, by all means contact Phil Shepherd or myself, and I'm happy to contact you with the group. Anyway, please let me to introduce Alex. Alex from Surrey. She's the best person to talk about hate crime and the available support. So I don't want to say anything more. I do believe that Alex is better on that. Alex, hello, good evening.
Hi everybody, thanks Michal, what a brilliant event, great to see so many people, a few of you I know, a few of you I don't. So yeah, I'm the director of SARI, which is Stand Against Racism and Inequality. Can you all hear me okay? Is that okay?
Yes, that's fine.
And we're a hate crime charity. We've been around for 30 years next year, so a long time. When it comes to Somerset, we've been funded to deliver hate crime services for about the last 6 years now, by National Lottery for the last 5 years, 4.5 years, and before that the council funded us as well, just to support us in the first place so you would have a hate crime charity. But we cover all of Avon and Somerset, and we started out life as a race charity back in the late 80s, early 90s. And I started in Surrey as its first caseworker in 1991, so probably how many years it is. I went to university with Brenda, who you can see, I don't know how many of you know Brenda Weston, we both did social policy together, but there you go. So I started because when I was growing up, I grew up in a really rural area, not too different from many of the Somerset villages and towns, and we were the only minority ethnic family in that area, to be honest. Or there was I think a couple of takeaways and us. And my dad is Iranian. Both my brother and my dad were of colour, so you could really tell they stuck out. With me, it was less obvious, but we were basically racially abused pretty much. I think every bus journey to school was, there was something going on in terms of abuse, but I got pretty resilient to it. With my brother, it was a lot more physical, to be fair, and I think he's probably not really quite got over it to this day, and he's now 50. So that's what made me join SARI back then. I saw this little job advertised in The Guardian from the Home Office, and I thought, I understand that, because it wasn't really talked about when I was at school. You just got on with it, and you certainly didn't tell anyone about it. I tried to tell my mum, but she just said she couldn't really cope with it on top of everything else. And my dad wasn't around by then, so that's what got me involved. And SARI, we're there completely for victims of racism and all forms of hate crime. So that's homophobia, transphobia, disabled abuse, faith-based abuse. And people come to us for other reasons as well. You know, we've had people targeted because they're older. We've had people targeted because of their other beliefs or how they dress, or because they're associated with people. And it's very serious. I'm not going to sort of lie to you. You know, we deal with about 800 referrals a year, and of those 800 referrals, about 500 become full-blown cases. And Somerset has about 10% of our cases. With, you might expect Bristol is about 60%, and there's about 10% in the unitary authority areas. I don't think we're getting anywhere near the reporting we should from Somerset, because it's a massive area with lots of micro communities, and yeah, it's an area where, to be honest, we just can't do enough reaching out. Having Mikhail and Justina is making it, you know, that's fantastic, because I know they are people that reach out in their eyes and ears, and a few others in the room are as well. Suzanne's here tonight, and she has done lots of work, Suzanne Savage, lots of work in the past dealing with racism for years, and I'm sure she's going to tell you more about that later. And we deal with every kind of incident you can imagine. So it ranges from, Mikhail, just give me a warning when I've got to finish, by the way. It's everything from children being bullied and targeted at school, vehicles being attacked, so scratched, tyres slashed, or other things done to cars, attacks on property and homes. So that happens a fair bit. Verbal abuse is the most common type of incident, and it ranges all the way up to murder. But we're very, you know, we've had 3 in 30 years, and the three murders we've had have happened in the last 7 years. 2 in Bristol. One was Bijan Ibrahimi, which you may have seen in the news. He was an Iranian man. Another was Kamal Ahmadani, who was an Iraqi refugee, which was in Bristol, who's in supported living. And the third happened in Weston-super-Mare a few weeks ago, which you may or may not have seen, because it's not been massively in the news because we caught the offenders. So it's now obviously we kind of have to be quite careful because it's going to go through court. And then recently you may have seen the young Namibian man who was run over in coming out of Southmead Hospital at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So we're supporting that family. Our mayor's been attacked, Marvin Rees. Since the statue was brought down, he's had some really unpleasant attacks.
Excuse me, Alex. What in case, for example, if there's someone who have experienced hate crime, what that person can expect from your service?
Yeah, that's a good idea. So basically, what can you expect from us? Firstly, you can come to us by email, through the web, by social media, or phoning, and we will. Even under COVID, we're still seeing people. We're getting out to people if they really need to be seen, but obviously that's only in the cases they really have to be seen. We're also doing a lot online by phone and by video conferencing, but we are seeing people who need to be seen. Once you come to us, we sit down with you and look at everything that's happened, and then we agree a plan with you over what you want to do to solve it as much as possible. And it takes, some cases can take years, but some cases can be dealt with within a few months. The main thing is the person who's being targeted is in the driving seat. And basically what we do is we coordinate and challenge the agencies to really do the best they can, because quite often people say to us, we're not really being listened to, we're not being taken seriously, they don't really believe us. So we advocate, we challenge, we champion, we coordinate, we organise meetings, we write reports. Like if a serious case review report arrives on a police officer's desk or a housing officer's desk or authority's desk, it's taken seriously. We've got various ways of working. We've also got connections to lawyers and to a lot of local partner agencies who can help make a difference. So, I mean, that it's quite hard to give you all the details because every case.
Of course. Is it any chance to paste some contact details, including the website, perhaps some email address, if there are anyone who would like to find out more? Thank you, Alex.
Put the website in, but what I'll do is I'll also put my email in.
That's great.
But please do visit our website to know more.
That's great. Thank you very much, Alex. I do believe that I hope that your message will reach those in need. And in the meantime, I would like to come back what actually Alex was talking about, because one of those victims of hate crime agreed to share the experience. And obviously, due to the trauma, this gentleman didn't decide to show his face and talk to us tonight because of it's cost him too much of emotions. But what he's done, he pre-recorded his voice for us. So please let me to share what he prepared for us.
I'm living in the UK about 12 years now. When I came to England first time, I thought that's gonna be an escape for me from my country, because I lost my mom when I was quite young. I was 19 years old. My mom passed away just like that, just literally. Was everything alright? And then one day she just passed out, and it was terrible for me. This shot makes me thinking about changes. So I also start to make the music, and yeah, I found a job in England. So I decided, okay, in Poland was, as I said, I had lost my parent. My mother passed away, so I decided to escape to England and try to start new life with my girlfriend, with my missus. And yeah, everything was great. I lived 7 years with my missus in England, and I hadn't got any problems. I was a young guy, my 20s, mid-20s. Then I split with my missus. I met new person, Isabel. And we live really nice again, 6.5 years in England, so that's about 13 years of my life. I split with my missus again, with Isabel, and I decided to sell all of my equipment, music equipment, and just try new life and discover Asia. In that time, I was living in Bridgwater, a little village. So yeah, I just split with my missus, escaped from my work. I mean, I just gave a notice and I left it. And on my leaving party, when I left the job, and we had the last party in the town, in the Bridgwater town. It was an amazing night anyway. I remember this. I remember everything, you know, from that night. It was amazing. It was like, wow. I lived in England, and I'm going like for a half-year trip to Asia. So yeah, that was my plan. Amazing. Then, on my way back to home from this party, I lost my conscious by a shot from someone. It was blackout. Someone knocked me down from behind or whoever. It was massive shot. I don't remember anything after this. I only remember the time when I wake up in ambulance and I started touching my face and I realized I lost my teeth. Three teeth from front and one snapped on the back, and my jaw, everything was in pain, my head, I was in blood, and a horrible experience. Then I wake up in the hospital next day. I mean, same day, but the morning, and I had some surgery on my jaw, and they connected together because I get multi-fracture jaw and 3 teeth missing, so it's even hard to say. But that was the beginning, and today is a year and month after the accident, and maybe the physical injuries are not so bad. I'm still taking treatment from mental and also dental doctors. It's changed completely my life upside down. Mentally, I'm really fighting with my life now. I'm fearing the depression and anxieties and sometimes panic attacks, like if I'm between bigger groups of people. So these things affect me, I think, to the end of my life. That's gonna be a trauma. No way it's gonna be as was.
I do believe that it was quite powerful. It's giving you some kind of idea what those people experience, how do they feel, and how the lives have changed. Because of, as he has mentioned, he had some plans. He was going to Asia, but obviously it didn't happen. And now, these days, he needs to struggle with his mental health. Anyway, I decided to do that at the beginning, as I didn't want to leave that in the end and say goodbye to you, because I do believe that our next guest speakers will talk a little bit more about hopes and what we can do together in order to change that. But in order to build that link between what the victims of hate crime just was saying about, I would like to introduce you to Dr. John Barnes, who will tell us about the effects of racism on mental health. John, are you with us?
Yes. Thanks, Mikhail. It's a real pleasure to be here. I'm not going to try and cover what is a massive kind of topic, but so it's a difficult. Where does one start with all this? I'd say that Black Lives Matters and the pandemic as well. It's having a massive effect in my profession in psychiatry. I'm a psychiatrist in Bridgwater. I have a ward called Ash Ward in Bridgwater, which is for the whole county of Bridgwater, a male low secure rehabilitation unit. Yes, I've been, the Engine Room, Phil and Somerset Film have done work with me and my patients in recent years. And so I became involved in Bridgwater Together, I'm pleased to say, in the pandemic. I hadn't got to events before then. But what's been going on really since very recently is a lot of medical students across the country have got very interested in Black Lives Matters, and there's been a lot of conferencing about it in recent weeks. And in my professional body, Royal College of Psychiatrists, there's a big focus on it. So what's been going on? I mean, I think what are people talking about, that over the last 30 years at least, that things have remained the same, in that there's a vast over-representation of Black and ethnic minority groups in people who are detained in hospital under the Mental Health Act, and also in use of other forms of compulsion along the way, and a less take up, less offering of psychological therapies. And so there's a sort of generally a worse experience for people from Black and ethnic minorities in mental health services. So this has remained the same. And so my professional body is trying to take it, get the bit, in the teeth to get to grips with it. And so they've appointed a couple of racial equality leads, and are doing a lot of conferencing about it. I was on one yesterday. So that's good. One of the things that I found very affecting was David Harewood, the Black actor, his film Psychosis and Me, which he did with the BBC last year, which I didn't know about, but this been made aware of it recently. And he you might know him, recognize him from Homeland. He was in Homeland, and he's in the Supergirl films. So he's a big Hollywood actor now. But he had a psychosis, a severe mental illness, back 20 or 30 years ago in London when he was a young actor. And his account of that, he went back last year to sort of investigate it all and look at his notes, his medical notes, and he was horrified to see what doctors had written, the sort of judgmental things they'd said. That kind of thing is having a big effect, I'd say, on my colleagues. And I think the thing is that now we know that things are worse for Black and ethnic minority groups, and also for professionals as well. So we have to put our own house in order professionally in order to be able to, to give a better service to patients and so on. So we've got to do that. What I suggested back along a couple of meetings ago was that maybe from this meeting, and there could be further work in Bridgwater Together to produce something for the big international conference next year in Birmingham of the Royal College of Psychiatrists, which has over 3,000 delegates, some from all over the world come, so we could put in something there. And Phil suggested a short film. So with Phil, conspiring with Phil and Debs Richardson at Somerset Film, I've put together a bid for money to put a film together to the Royal College of Psychiatrists. So we'll hear next month if we get the money for that, which would help that projects along. And I think the thing is, we know that there's worse outcomes, but we really don't know exactly how that all fits together. And so I think there's got to be a lot of listening, and it shouldn't be people in Black and ethnic minorities speaking in echo chamber to each other. It has to be the fragile white people like me along, listening and supporting and enabling and getting the message across, getting the learning across. So there's going to be more research on this, of really listening to people's stories and trying to understand how racism and ethnic minority status causes disadvantage in various ways and interacts with all other kinds of disadvantage. So I think, and I hope, there'll be a continued impetus on this for years now. It'll take years. But there's a real will, and I think people in my profession who've been doing this, trying to push on the doors for years and years and years, are feeling that now is the time something could actually change. So
that's great. That's great, John. Okay. That's really important. I think that's one of those factors that sometimes we don't remember those who haven't experienced that, we are more focused on law and punishment and how the services are working. But then the attack, the hate crime, and the racism is just the beginning, and the victims must face his or her demons, if you like. Anyway, thank you, John, for your input. That was really interesting, and I also believe and hope that it's just our first step, and with people who join us today, we could make a change in our local community. Okay, before I will introduce you to Suzanne, I would like to ask Ginny to summarize the chat, because I've noticed that you are quite active on chat. So just 2-3 minutes from Ginny.
Hi, everyone's been introducing themselves. Pete's got a new group up in running in Shepton Mallet, Frome and Yeovil and Street called Page. Alex has said about the workshops that she does that Sari do in schools and also to other organisations, and Emily has supported those and say how excellent they are and to you know, they're really worthwhile. People are sharing contact details and want to be involved in Bridgwater Together, so that's great. And a number of people have really thanked the person who came forward and spoke about his personal experience, about how brave that was, really courageous, and just to, if we could pass on our thanks to him for sharing that, because that it can't have been easy for him.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you, Ginny. Okay, allow me to introduce to Suzanne, Suzanne Savage. I do believe Suzanne will tell us about history of Black people in Somerset. Is that right, Suzanne?
Hello.
Yes. Hello, Suzanne. Good to see you. How are you tonight?
Yes, I just repeat what I've said, which is basically, yes, I am going to talk about Black people and mixed race people living in Somerset, but I also will be talking about BAME people as well. Okay, so thanks very much for inviting me to be here this evening. Lovely to see you, and I can see a few faces that I've known for years, haven't seen for a long time, and hi to everybody. So basically, yes, I was a racial equality officer and a victim support worker. I started out as in SHREC, Somerset Racial Equality Council, and did that work for a 15-year period until we had to close our doors in 2013. So yes, in that time, I've gained a lot of experience around the issue of Black and minority ethnic people and their experience of racism and discrimination. I certainly can speak for, just touch on personally, an experience of moving to Yeovil in the 1970s and being one of very few mixed race people in the community. So part of what I said I'd talk about is the experience of Black and mixed race people living in the area. And you'll know, possibly some of you, maybe some of you, it's news to you this evening, that for a long time in the county of Somerset, we have had people who live in Somerset and who indeed have families in Somerset to this day, whose, you know, who work, you know, the relatives, their fathers, their grandfathers or whatever, were Black GIs. So in our community, we have elders who we very much respect, who to me were very, very brave in the experience that they had to go through, which was being mixed race in a time when that was very, very unusual. So I like to actually think of the Caribbean generation post-Windrush being the first footers, but tonight I'll give it to those children of the Black GIs and the very, very difficult times in some cases, sometimes very joyful in their experiences in their families, and sometimes very, very confusing and very, very isolating. So we remember them this evening as we approach Black History Month, and on to now the experience of generations that came afterwards. As I say, I would be classed as a daughter of somebody who came to the country from Jamaica, and very much proud of my connection with the Windrush generation. So the experience of Black and mixed race people living in Somerset in my professional capacity gave me tremendous insight into their experiences. I think there's probably, I haven't seen in the chat, but there's certainly people I know that want to be part of this evening who would know very much when I say this, that we know our area, we know our communities, and we know how difficult it is as a Black or mixed race person to walk this path in very, very difficult times, to go through experiences of being in school, settling, bringing up families, being neighbours, being members of the community, whatever. We know that we have had challenges. We know we have had to break a lot of ground. We know that that has been, in some cases, really difficult. Issues to do with shame, issues to do with stigma, issues to do with trauma, issues to do with families who are not always supportive or equipped to maybe support us in the way that they would or should. And that's for a lot of reasons. We've seen vast changes in our county over recent, many, many years indeed. And in fact, it's quite comforting to still hear people say, well, there's one, and that might be about them walking up a high street and seeing another Black or mixed race person, and how comforting that is to see somebody. So we know our communities have changed over the years. We know that we've had incoming groups of people to our communities, and things have actually grown tremendously. So we're a long way, maybe, although it still occurs, for that very lonely experience of being the only mixed race or Black young person in the school. As I say, that will still occur, but it's less of an issue than it was many, many years ago. We know that racial reporting, racial hate crime is very much an underreported situation. My experience professionally was that a lot needs to be done to actually gain confidence and trust in people, in individuals and in communities, for them to engage with the business of reporting race hate crime. And that I learned over many, many years. In fact, I worked with parents and young children, teenagers, families who were experiencing something for the first time in some cases. Gave me tremendous insight into the dynamics and the issues that happen and occur, and what families have to go through. So I've heard very frequently people say that it's very regressive. We're going backwards. We're not going forwards. And regretfully, I have to say that I think this is the case. And I wonder about where all that good work went, when in point of fact, we still have our children in schools subjected to racial hatred. We still have on our streets concerns around racism and racial attacks. And you know, it's going to take a long time, but race was very much on the agenda. And I'd like to see it very much back on the agenda. And I'd like to actually think that I could continue in some way to support my community, and particularly in the business of learning. And we do need to do a big job about learning.
Thank you, Suzanne. That's really important to have your voice, and I'm happy that you are with us tonight. And it's good to know that you are in the community, keen to make that change for the next generation and generations. That's really important, and I do believe that in future our paths will cross once again, and hopefully step by step we will make that change. Thank you once again. And now I would like to introduce you to Judith. Judith, it's a mental health professional who has lived in Bridgwater for the past 30 years. Hello, Judith, are you with us?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, hello. Could you introduce yourself, please? And I do believe that you prepare a piece of art for tonight.
I've written a kind of very brief poem. The ink is still a bit wet on it. I edited it about an hour ago. 20 to 6, I think I finished editing this. But just before I just go through that, so yes, I've lived in Bridgwater for 30 years. I grew up in Hampshire, so it's interesting. And hello, Suzanne, nice to see you again. I hope you remember me. We met probably about 20 years ago. Our paths crossed. So, it was at your party. I won't mention what age. It was a birthday party.
Yes.
I didn't give your age away. Friend of Antoinette's. Okay. Anyway, so I grew up in Hampshire, so very much everything Suzanne's just said. That was me, the only black child in the school, etc., etc. So, and then moving to Bridgwater is kind of like a smaller version of where I grew up, but it's a bit livelier and it's a nicer part of the country. So I've worked in mental health for 30 years in the NHS and in private practice as well. It's interesting, I'm just thinking, I can probably count on one hand the amount of people of colour I've actually worked with individually, and when I have worked with people of colour, that's been really empowering for me and for them. The rapport's been really good, and they don't have to explain things, so that's just another thing that I'd probably like to do more of further down the line, but I appreciate where I live in the county. So the poem I've written is just a brief sort of overview of the theme of tonight, which was Racism Stops With Me. And that's an interesting concept for a black person to actually think about. So as people that know me and have heard my stuff before know that I like to kind of get people to think of things in a different way and perhaps turn it around a little bit. So racism stops with me believing that racism stops with me. Racism stops with me feeling safe wherever I go. Racism stops with me being seen as me and what I know. Racism stops with me not explaining my origins and where I'm really from. Racism stops with me not being the minority voice for everyone. Racism stops with me no longer talking about racism. Racism stops with me no longer hearing news of discrimination, injustice, and fear. Racism stops with me being one of many black voices that you respectfully hear. Racism stops with me knowing that racism stops with me. Thank you.
That's great. Well done. Really good. Really good. I think you diversed our event with your content. That's really important. It's great, Judith. I'm really grateful for that. Is there anything that you would like to add?
Not at this point, perhaps maybe later, because I probably need to just hear some more things that people have said. Really, really sad to hear the stories of, the abuse, the recording we heard just now, stuff that's happening, and it's worldwide, but it affects us all. And just briefly, I was in town today in Bridgwater, and I went into Smith's, and they've actually got a table with books of Black history, and what was really nice to see was actually a children's book with Black children as characters in there on a table. They put that together because people have in the town locally have been asking for this stuff. And just seeing that, I just thought that's so validating, that's so empowering for everybody, and that was great. So that's all from me for now, and thank you for the comments I'm seeing popping up on the screen.
That's great, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
So now it's time for Fiona. I can see Fiona's room. Oh, there she is. Hello, Fiona. If you can just unmute yourself, say a few words about you. I do believe most of our guests know you already due to your participation in our recent events, but there are new faces tonight as well. So please unmute your microphone and tell us what have you prepared, what would you like to talk about tonight?
Hello everybody, there's a few names and faces I've seen that I recognize from years and years ago, and I'm still here. So tonight I'd like to talk to you about firstly my experiences of being a Black woman living in Somerset, and second of all being a Black mother to a mixed race child living in Somerset. So I moved to Somerset, Wellington in Somerset about 15 years ago. And the idea was, we bought the house in Somerset to do it up, sell it on, buy myself a book hall in London. 15 years later, we're still here. And so when we moved here, my husband is obviously English and my daughter is mixed race. Bringing up a daughter that is mixed race, we've got the classic thing of taking her to the supermarket, people touching her hair without asking, and saying what a beautiful child she is. She still is beautiful, though she's much taller than me and much bigger than me now. And so we had that experience of bringing up a mixed race child and all the classic things that you get, her hair and things like that, and the struggle to get her hair under control and things like that. So my experience of living in Wellington, where I still live, has been quite interesting. From people being curious, where are you from? I'm from London, and that's not enough. Classic thing. I'm from London, which part of London? And then they say, oh, but where are you really from? I think every Black person has got that kind of experience about having to explain yourself. But I must say the majority of people in Wellington have been curious and welcoming. So touch wood, we haven't had that bad experience. It's interesting to hear the other stories about people, especially the ladies who are mixed race, being the only mixed race child in the school. My daughter is going through exactly the same thing. She probably is the only mixed race child in the school. So I'm quite lucky that the fact that my daughter Evie is quite a resilient child. And although she does come across racism, being the only mixed race child in the school, she's quite resilient in that she is able to brush it aside, as it were. I can remember distinctly when she was about 5 or 6 years old, we were in the playground, and I think there was something or rather happening in the media about some kind of racism incident. And this young girl came up to her and said, oh, you're not from here, are you? And she goes, no. She said, where are you from? I said, well, my mum comes from Africa, my dad is English. I said, but you're not from around here? She goes, no. She goes, and then Evie turned it round to the girl and said, where do you come from? No man's land. And I was quite amused by that, because she was able to kind of say that this person is disturbing me because all of a sudden they've picked on me because I'm from a different race. But she's able to kind of turn it around and say, where do you come from? She said, do you come from no man's land? So that has been the theme of Evie's growing up. 15 years later, living in Wellington, from being a handful of people from other races living in Wellington, I've seen an increase in the last maybe 5 or 6 years. I'm seeing an increase in people from other races living in Wellington. And it's quite diverse communities living in Wellington. So we have a large Filipino community, Polish community, and African community. For example, when we moved here 15 years ago, my neighbors were all English. And in my street now, I can see my next door neighbor is from Jamaica. The next door neighbor is from Romania. Next to her, we have a couple from Poland. And next to them, we have a couple who are from, I think, Romania as well. So slowly by slowly, it's beginning to feel a little bit more welcome. It's quite nice to walk in the supermarket and see people from different races. So slowly by slowly, that is becoming quite an cosmopolitan city, cosmopolitan place to live. So my experiences of racism are, I would say, in a way, is quite positive. But I do worry about my daughter and her being the only mixed race child in the school, and the consequences she's going to have to face growing up. Funny enough, something just popped into my head about my daughter in school. We took her from a big school because she's quite a bright child, And we took her to a small little village school. And again, she was only a mixed race child in the whole school. And funny enough, she went for an interview at a private school just down the road, Wellington School. And we had to get a recommendation from the teacher, her teacher then at the primary school. And sat down in an interview with him, and he goes, well, he rattled off all the names of people that had got into the school. All happened to be nice white English girls. And then he said, do you think Evie's clever enough to get into that school? We said, yes, I think she's clever enough to get into the school. And it kind of felt that he was doubting her intellectual ability. But funny enough, she went for the interview and did pass. And she had the option of going to the private school and then going to the local comprehensive school. But she decided that she wanted to stay with her friends, and we had to respect that. But it's the little, I would say, microaggressions that you do get from people in authority, as it were. So I think that's me done.
Thank you, Fiona. And I think you've mentioned in the end of your presentation, you mentioned quite modern, but it's not well known yet, a term which is called microaggression, and we need to rise that profile because it's easy to hide your intentions using those inappropriate comments, basically. So thank you, Fiona, for that. And in order to connect another person with what you were saying, I would like to introduce you to Vienna. But before I will introduce you to Vienna, and she will, who is going to share her experience as a child in Somerset, who has had to experience some kind of inappropriate behavior and comments. I would like to ask Ginny to summarize chat. What is going on, Ginny?
Hi, there's lots going on in the chat. Please get involved. People are really thanking the range of speakers, really enjoying the speakers. There's a lot of talk about various people who do workshops for schools and things. A lot of stuff around schools, so maybe that might be a future topic for one of the events, perhaps. Someone's offered a constitution to share for Black Lives Matter groups across Somerset. And people, lots of people are sharing their contact details to connect and what have you. Lots of people sharing with Suzanne to connect. Andy shared the Doja Parker poem, and someone's asked, has anyone worked with Show Racism the Red Card or used sport as a platform to influence? So if you've done that, please get involved in the chat and answer. Thank you.
It's great, Ginny. Thank you for that update. And now I would like to introduce to Vienna Ashley Watts, who would like to talk about how it was to grow up mixed in Somerset. Hello, Vienna.
Hi, good evening, everybody.
Hello, good to see you. How was? Do you enjoy so far?
Yes, it's really good. I'm loving it. The lady before me, Fiona, what she had to say is so very true. Hi, especially when it comes to, as she said, being mixed in Somerset is something, it's beautiful and it's wonderful, but it's not for a lack of challenges, I think is the best way to say. Yeah. So
what would you like to talk about tonight?
So I actually prepared just a small little speech, just to kind of just say a little bit. I've actually done this one before, but I don't think very many people heard it, so I'm kind of cheating a little bit. So I have always questioned my blackness. I've always had doubts, denial, and tried to hide my racial identity. Knowing that in a predominantly white community I grew up in, it was easier to identify as white as people guessed at my skin tone, so that I wouldn't have to constantly feel that I needed to defend my black side. I soon realized life is not that simple, because I stood out. The way I was dressed was weird. I had wild, untamed curls. My skin was just that little bit darker, not by a lot, but enough for people to notice. and it became apparent that I was not like everyone else. I wasn't white. I began learning of my heritage by asking questions and understanding my mother's Jamaican roots. Traveling to London, I was immersed in more culture and observed a more diverse and vibrant community, far, far away from the hushed countryside I had grown up in. My mother, along with my auntie, had worked alongside minority communities within Taunton and its surrounding areas, which as a child gave me countless culturally enriching experiences. As a result of such exposure, I saw the beauty and educational value in the variety of ethnicities. But I also faced the difficulty in comprehending that not everyone else shared my openness, excitement, and non-judgment. A consequence of becoming proud that you are Black when you are mixed with light skin, blonde hair, and blue eyes in a racially discriminative environment is that people still only want to see you as one or the other. Your very existence is questioned constantly. You're a mongrel, too white to be Black and too Black to be white. So the pressure mounts to choose a side. Trying to own both my privilege and oppression marked the beginning of an inner conflict that would plague and torment me most of my life, a fight internally every day. So that was just like a little bit of a speech that I wrote, and I thought that for me it highlights quite a lot of things when you are mixed growing up in Somerset, and understanding that you're already kind of as a child or as a boy or a girl growing up, you're already having to question your identity before you even have to do that, before you have a chance to actually allow it to grow and to flourish. You're already inherently conflicted about who you are, especially if you're someone like me who's white passing, as this is a new term. Either like white passing or Black passing, but so when you're light skinned, it's like, you know, you feel like you have to put on this double facade, a fight. I always have to be the cocky one, the loud one, just so that I can prove myself to people and prove that there are other ways of being Black, there are other ways of being mixed, and to fight that stereotype. That's a very big thing that I think mixed children, mixed young people and adults are facing every day, is fighting that stereotype of what we should look like, or how we should talk, or how we should dance, or what things we should like. You know, we're constantly having to deal with that. So that is kind of a little bit of a background on the things that I feel that, you know, working forward and going forward with Black Lives Matter and working with some amazing organisations, which my co-organiser will talk about in a moment, Emily. I'm really looking forward to kind of highlighting these issues for people and kind of hoping to find other people with similar stories, because I know that they're out there, you know. If I just say a little thing about Emily, my co-organiser, we both met at a protest I organised back in June for Black Lives Matter, and through that we have, you know, a really beautiful friendship, and we've decided to kind of, you know, move forward with bringing awareness and educating people in the local community and working with some amazing people. Emily moved here when she was 17 from Madagascar. Her mum's Madagascar and her father is English, well, and a bit of Swiss as well, I believe. But she moved here when she was 17 to go to college in Taunton, and through that, for her as a family that traveling, a multinational family, a big traveling family, for them it was always celebrated. Her mother always told them to celebrate the diversity, celebrate the fact that they're different, the fact that they are Black. So when she moved here, for her, her experience was more inquisitive towards understanding why people had these perceptions and these implicit and explicit biases towards people. On a level I can't completely say for her, you know, it affected her on different levels. But that's all I'm gonna say, y'all. And I'll pass it over to her.
That's great, Gina. Thank you for that. And Emily, good to see you with us.
Hello. I think my microphone is off now. So thank you, everybody, for organising it. Thank you, Vienna, for this very brief introduction, very lively and bubbly introduction, as we said. We only met in June, and since then we haven't really left each other's sides, because we found this, when you're mixed race and you meet with another mixed race person, it's just one of those moments when you go, oh my God, somebody that finally can not understand, but live through similar events. You go, yes, you want to keep these people around you because you know that, with one simple look, you can go, girl, did you see that? And the girl goes, yeah, I did. And I go, okay, we're on the same page. But anyway, we were here this evening invited to talk on behalf of what we've done since June, because we've been involved in a lot of organisations, including BLM Taunton. And as Vienna pointed out, we're a grassroots organisation, eager and looking to make change in our area, just the same as, every and each wonderful people that you are here gathered tonight. So we're very proud and happy to be a part of this change. Like many people since June, we are barely a few months old in our activism, but our want to change is as strong as those who've been fabulously doing it for years. So here, shout out for Suzanne. We only met her last week, and already we're very humbled by that experience. We know, work's got to be done. Since our first protest, we've come forward and engaged with issues head on. And although we're new, every setback that we've kind of had, we are taking them as learning opportunities to grow further and be smarter with the next moves. It's been wonderful to hear all of the things that have been happening for so long. And in a way, it's a constant game of playing catch up and seeing how can we fit in, how can we bring this together, and how can we make this so that everybody knows about it and not just mixed or black or BAME people, because obviously racism affects everybody. You live it or you portray it, and it's definitely one of those that should be part of the conversation. So in summary, since June, we have co-organised a few events in Taunton, including a march earlier this September that a few have attended. We're also attended as many BLM and anti-racism events happening around us, and made sure to connect with as many activists in Somerset who, just like us, couldn't stand any longer and just wanted to make change. So to all of you, keep the work, because everybody here is so inspiring, and every second I can't believe that we're here. And every person or organisation we've met and been a part of has been truly humbling, and it also, like I said previously, awoke us to the amount of work needed to be done. So in terms of next step for BLM, BLM Taunton especially, what we're trying to do is pushing and creating a long-term sustainable projects with multiple diverse partnerships around the county, because Somerset, as Dr. John Barnes said earlier, it is quite a big place with lots of micro communities, and this is both something that can be used as a tool, as well as it can be a hindrance. But at this point in time, with every obstacle, you have to go, right, it's going to be the next step, take it as you can. And in that regards, we're also trying to break the stereotypes that seems to have associated with BLM, and stop that echo chamber that somebody as well earlier said, I forgot to write down, has said. Because one of the problems that we kept seeing was that, when you hold rallies, you hold events, you hold things like this, most often than not, it's people who are engaged in the movement that turn up to these events. What we're trying to target is the people who are on the fence, the ones who are not anti-racist, but not racist. Those are the ones that, when we say silence is violence, concerns them, because by not coming, by not perpetrating, by not engaging, by staying on the fence, you're just allowing events to happen. So amongst, I'll briefly wrap up. So amongst that, we need a plan. We wanted also a plan of attack for all of the people that we are meeting and attending. So in that case, we're trying to organize a structure, an organization and plans, which is something that we will be shortly announcing, especially with Black History Month coming up soon, which we're trying to basically build a whole month's worth of event, and through that month's worth of event, engage with the people of Taunton at the same time as trying to broaden it and make sure that the plan that we have can be a model that other BLMs can copy if they wish to, which is why I'm saying we've been talking a lot with different BLMs. And then another thing we're also doing is trying to find true allies and not performative allies in all sectors of life, including business, social, political, medical, etc. Because what we found as well is that a lot of people do seem to come onto the bandwagon, but only because it tends to be BLM as this fake idea of it's a trend. And that's another thing that we're trying to break, is this cycle of trendness, temporary moment, something that's fun to be on, but not do. A lot of people walk the walk, but don't, no, talk the talk, but don't walk the walk. So again, it's this idea of perpetuating all of this. And alongside of that, yes, it's a lot of things that we're trying to cram all at the same time, hence we're very, very busy and sleepless people, but create a long-term set of activities and plans in a way made by the people for the people, which is why we do like attending events like these and talking to as many people as we can from the area, because these ideas are made by locals living in these communities, and this is where you have a better chance of implementing change, is because a head teacher from Taunton will be, I want my school to be more like this, will be like, great, what can we do, how can we get on board, excuse me, and talks like this where you realize actually there's been, you know, charities and organizations set for years. Can we now work in a way that, because BLM has created this immediate mass following, can we bring everything together in a cohesive way, and a way that moves everything forward? So yes, in the next immediate future, we're working very hard on Black History Month, and we're looking for anybody, obviously, in the long term, when I mean long term, as in like from now to the rest of our lives, want to come in and get involved and help out, and got any ideas, we'd be very much appreciative on any of that kind of help. And just to finish up with my notes, yes, so we're in contact with every other BLM that we can possibly be in contact with, including Exeter, with the brilliant Maya Thomas, who's basically been, you know, head steering this movement by herself down over there, and has been doing tremendous work. I definitely recommend, if you don't know who she is, have a quick Google, because she'll probably pop up. She's done lots of work in Exeter herself and spearheaded it that side. We've been working, as Pete the Poet said, with Chepter Mallet, Yeovil, Bridgwater, especially with Andrew, and just basically creating this kind of the system of networks, sorry, there's two languages hopping in my head, the system of networks, so that everybody can get the same kind of support and the same kind of camaraderie, to make sure that if something is happening in this region, can we also do it in another region? And if not, can we push it all together, so that as a collective Somerset, we have a united front, rather than this dissociative multiple BLM that seems to be happening around the world, where, you know, some people come up to us and be like, oh, you're BLM, like, look what you do in America. And we're like, but we're not America, we're trying to do our thing here. So to finish basically my big load of rambling, which I hope wasn't too horrible to listen to, I just wanted to finish with my favorite quote, which is a Malcolm X quote, saying that when I is replaced by we, even illness becomes wellness. And today this meeting is the prime example of that. So there you go.
That's great, Emily. Thank you for that. It's I can tell there's a lot of enthusiasm in your team, and you've got a great plans and projects in the future. But I must say that I do believe that you need to have supportive people around you in order to achieve your goals. And therefore, I would like to ask Brenda, because I see Brenda is there, and according to I've seen the pictures just recently, and I've seen Brenda over there. I'm not sure whether Brenda, are you fast? Would you like to say a few words about your point of view about Black Lives Matter in Taunton?
Well, what can I say? I mean, how do you follow Vienna and Amelie? Their energy and their wisdom is really impressive, and I've talked to them a little bit during the Black Lives Matter demos, and I really, you know, want to support them in any way that I can. I think I was telling Vienna the other day that the Somerset Western Taunton Council has now agreed to form an equalities, corporate equalities group. And I think that at some point I will certainly be hoping that Amelie and Vienna will be able to come and talk to the group It's not yet formed. It's just got the terms of reference. So I'm hoping that we can link up between the council and Black Lives Matter, so that we've got better understanding of what's going on in our area, and are better able as a council to respond to the needs and aspirations of our colleagues in Black Lives Matter and more widely. And it's lovely to see Suzanne and Fiona and everybody tonight. So hello everybody. I'm not very good at trying to chat and concentrate on what people are saying, so a bit slow with that. Yeah, it's great, and let's move forward together.
That's great. Thank you, Brenda, for being with us tonight. Okay, I would like to ask Ginny once again to update us about what's going on chat, and to summarize people's comments. Perhaps there are some questions. And also I would like to remind Vienna and Emily to, if you haven't done it yet, please leave some contact details for those who would like to support you.
Hi, thanks, Mal. It's been busy again. People, there's all sorts going on. Rob has shared lots of websites about how to get involved in policing, so there's lots there. Yanis has asked about how to be involved in local Black Lives Matter movements. So if people could share those different contact details, that would be great. And people are, what's come across really, really strongly is that people are really recognising each other's experiences. And yeah, that's been expressed very strongly. Amelie has asked if people can share their contact details, which they have, but for GDPR reasons, we can't put them all into an email and send them around afterwards, unless people expressly say that. So if you are happy to go into a shared email after the event, we can do that. And so we can email you all so that you can all have them, because it's quite difficult to write everything down and, you know, listen to all the really interesting speakers at the same time. People are talking a lot about Black History Month. If there are Black History Months going on, please let Somerset diverse communities know so that we can share and tell other people about those. We'd like to connect those events across the county. So yeah, please let us know if there are things going on so that we can do that. And people are absolutely loving Amelie's energy and heartfelt enthusiasm. Yeah, sorry, there's something else. There's a few more bits coming up as I talk. So people are talking about the Bridgwater Quayside festival, and yeah, and now people are saying whether or not they're happy to share their email. So that's great. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ginny, once again. And now when we talked about Black Lives Matter in Totem, I would like to talk about Black Lives Matter movement in Bridgwater. I hope Andrew Jeffrey is with us and will tell us why he decided to organize the first event in Sedgemoor related to Black Lives Matter. Andrew, could you tell us why it's so important to have events like that in Sedgemoor, in Bridgwater in particular?
Well, yeah, thank you very much. And I have to start by saying a big thanks to lots of people who are here. So with the two demonstrations that we had, I have to say thanks to local organisations like Bridgwater Together, like Judith, who spoke earlier, like Brian Smedley, who connected us to our historic past with America and set up this amazing transatlantic call as part of what we did, for Glenn and Dave for their support, their organisation, their great speeches, to Phil and Deb at Somerset Film, to Vienna and Amelie for absolutely smashing it at our second demo and helping put together an even more representative kind of a group of people to speak at the events. So I suppose to say why I initiated and helped organise these things in this area, I suppose I sort of need to give it a bit of context. So yeah, why racism stops with me. I suppose to start with that, it's simply that it's not enough to be to not be racist. We need to be anti-racist, as you know, the great Angela Davis has said many times, and we all repeat. So the context of initiating the demos was to support the uprising that we saw around the world with Black Lives Matter. Now, of course, this isn't new. Black Lives Matter formed 4 years ago under President Obama, and the history of these things goes back at least 400 years. So the reason it was important to do that here is because racism is systemic and it's everywhere. So I'll talk a bit more about that, but ultimately, in the context of the way we live at the moment, we live under capitalism, which is ultimately, I'm going to tell a short story here, so bear with me, but capitalism is the practice of trying to accumulate profit, and our society is organized around that goal. And so this helps us understand a bit about what racism is. So to accumulate that profit, you need to rely on hierarchy and competition and dominating power over others. So during our imperial history, which lots of people have learned a lot about, we expanded and tried to take over lots of parts of the world throughout the British Empire. And it was built and relied on imposing these differences of hierarchy, and by categorizing the groups of people that we came across in other parts of the world. We weren't just going there to be their friends, unfortunately. So we should remember, of course, that on a planetary scale, people of color are not the minority. It's white people who are the minority. So we see clearly with what happened in that history that people were categorized and they were racialized. A very clear example is the transatlantic slave trade, where Black Africans were categorized as being subhuman so that they could justify what was going on. So this made people more easily to be coerced, controlled, and exploited. So race is essentially invented as part of this. So there's no biological basis for race. You know, how similar I am to somebody who lives in rural China, some part of rural China could be more different than me, than, you know, somebody who grows up in Birmingham who has a different color skin to me. So in that context, and that's explaining this a bit about the systemic nature of these things. So that history shaped the way that the UK state and government was formed. It was designed and developed to carry out these types of things. So that racism is built into a lot of the structures and institutions, and it's built into the law that we still have today. And we obviously see glimpses of it, but it's a bit like, you know, being a goldfish in these things. So irrespective of how people are acting, it's built into some of the systems around us that we live under. So irrespective of how visual and bold racism might appear, it's always there. It's not just the gobby racist who shouts slurs, although as we've heard, that is something very clearly that happens in this area. But I think people are even less aware of it, even though there might technically be less numbers of incidents. So the reason, sorry, I'm a bit nervous doing this, apologies. I'm just going to have a sip of water. So yeah, so it's not just the gobby racist shouting slurs. It's the reason Black people are less likely to get a chance to speak at a meeting, to get jobs, or even to get a response to their CV, and other examples that have been better explained by the people in this call and who know it in a way that I can never know it. So all of that everyday stuff, but ultimately it leads to people of color, and in particular Black people, being disproportionately poor, disproportionately having fewer life opportunities. So that's why it's important to show in a big majority white area that living under the same systems and laws and oppressions that we understand that exists here. So the pandemic, we've all seen, of course, has demonstrated very clearly these racial inequalities. People of colour work more likely in frontline jobs, live in worse housing, where it's often overcrowded, or it's more difficult to access healthcare. If you think about things like no recourse to public funds for or being allowed to have a job if you're seeking asylum, through to the Windrush scandal, which Michael Whitaker was one person that I met through the people here and through putting on those demos. I realized is right on, Windrush is right on our doorstep here as well. So so racism has become more visual in recent times, I think, and so I think the demos are an important response to that. It also highlights that we do have anti-Black racism in the area, because we need to point that out, because sometimes we can, I think a lot of people in this area may think that there's somehow less racism in this area, and that actually doesn't carry out in the figures as well. So it was brilliant to see everybody come out, and this is the positive that comes out of all of this. And I'm almost at the end. So it made relationships and connections between all kinds of people. So the organisations, the people that got involved. So after the first demo, which I organised, Amelie got in touch, and I asked her to come along and to really build and bring in all of these brilliant speakers. She talked about Maya from down Exeter and did this amazing job. And we had this amazing event, and we had a live call with people in Massachusetts in America as part of the event. It's just like, I can't believe it all happened. So it's important because we need to keep it visible. It's important to share information and educate people about racism, which is the project that Amelie and Vienna are doing, amazing things with. I think as part of these things, we need to consider building spaces where people can connect and support each other. And as people said, we need to take into account that for people who experience racism, it's a very exhausting thing, and that it's important that someone like me takes responsibility for educating other white people who may not understand things, rather than expecting local people of colour to have to do all the heavy lifting and face harmful views, even if they're accidental. So that's an important aspect of what we're thinking. And in terms of a local group, I've tried to bring in other people, and we've not quite managed to organise something more locally, but Amelie and Vienna have been carrying on, things in a broader way, and the things they've been organising are just going to be brilliant. So yeah, everyone get involved. So then ultimately, the vast majority of people in the UK face exploitation, the exploitation I described at the very start. So it's just that people of colour face additional degrees of exploitation through racism, and the degree to which that can even be to do with the darkness of your skin. And we heard a bit about that, obviously, earlier with speakers earlier. So ultimately, what comes out of these demos is this solidarity between all these groups and people. And that's the amazing positivity that comes out of it. That's exactly what we need, because everybody benefits from eliminating racism.
Right. Yeah. So, sorry, Andrew, I'm forced to intervene because I'm conscious of the time, but it's a great stuff, and I do encourage you to make those contacts. I was trying to keep an eye on chat, and people were saying what great job you are doing. So please leave some contact details to those people, because I know that there are people in Bridgwater who would like to support you, but perhaps until tonight they haven't been aware about you. That's the time to write your profile and invite those people to help you and share your ideas for the future. I'm not sure, Andrew, are you hoping to repeat a demo once again in near future?
I think so. At some point, it's we've talked quite a lot about it, and Amelie and Vienna are ahead on these things, really. I've not been able to spend so much time since the demos on this stuff, and we've been trying to work out what to do a bit. But yeah, we're definitely going to organise something. I'm certainly going to be supporting Amelie and Vienna, who I think are a bit further ahead with some of the plans. So yeah, I'd say everybody get involved with that. But I'll share an email so people can stay in touch.
Thank you. Thank you, Andrew, once again. And I think Andrew and Emily, they've mentioned about another quite important term, which is called anti-racism. So it's not enough to be not racist, but we should be all anti-racists. And that's the conversation that I've taken with the founder of Black Lives Matter in the Sticks. It's a national campaign trying to dealing with racism in rural places. So, and I do believe that Somerset counts as a rural place. So please let me to share the interview. Unfortunately, the founder Gurpreet Sidhu, she couldn't be with us tonight. But I've been able about 2 weeks ago to have a chat with her and record the interview. She also has got some message for you.
Hello, yeah, thank you for having me. I'm Gurpreet and I actually live just outside of Colchester in a place called Wivenhoe, which is in Essex. And we are on a river. And we have lots of woods and seaside around here, and it's quite a, the further out you go from here, the more and more rural it gets. And I helped set up, I became a founder of our local Black Lives Matter group. And as a result of that group, we decided to do a riverside protest. And we actually discovered that across the river, there's another village called Rowhedge. And that village had been having issues locally, like someone had wanted to do a BLM protest and the local notice board had said no because they were sick of hearing about Black Lives Matter, so they didn't do it. And then they tried to run some other activities and they'd struggled with that. So we got in touch and decided to do a joint protest across the river. Apparently the first time our two villages have ever worked together cooperatively. Usually there's a bit of friendly rivalry. And then I sort of thought about that protest and I had the thought that I think a lot of rural areas have when it comes to Black Lives Matter. And my thought was, who's going to see this? What's it for? What's the point of this? Is this just going to be some dog walkers that see this protest? Because obviously when you have protests in cities, they have a bigger impact. That question helped me to kind of decide and make some decisions around actually what rural racism is and what Black Lives Matter means in the Sticks. And we then decided to film the event and to share it because we wanted to try and encourage other rural areas to also protest or get involved in anti-racism work. And that was the initial idea. And that's now developed into a national campaign, which is called BLM, Black Lives Matter in the Sticks. And the aim of that is to end rural racism. So what we want to do is we want to encourage everyone, especially white people who we're targeting, who are not racist, to become anti-racist. And the reason for that is that the majority population in this country are white. And if you're in a rural area, then most of the people there living there are white. And most white people are not racist. But they're not anti-racist. So what we want to do is convert those people into being anti-racist, and then we can start to see a real sea change in our country. And one of the reasons we're targeting white people as well is because people of color or people of different ethnicities or people who are seen as other, are not able to change racism on their own. If we could, we would have already done it. The only way to do it is to get, white people on board and to change their hearts so that they become more active in anti-racism work.
What's the difference between people who are not racist and those who are actively anti-racist?
Yeah, so the difference between being not racist and anti-racist, the way I see it, is that if you're not racist, you don't harbour racist ideas. And racist ideas are obviously that one particular skin colour is better than another, yeah? Or one particular group of people are better than another. And many people are not racist. Many people may have unconscious bias, which I can explain a bit more about. We all have unconscious bias, But racism is where you actually think that you're superior or better and other people don't deserve the same rights as you. Now, not being racist means you don't believe in that, but it doesn't mean that you do anything about it. What it means is you don't harbor those beliefs yourself, so you feel like a good person because you're not actually hurting anyone. You're not wanting to harm anyone in any way. You're going about your life of treating everyone fairly. That's not being racist. However, to be anti-racist, you're actually accepting that although you have those beliefs, you understand that not everyone else does. And you're standing up to racism because you believe that actually, if you think everyone deserves to be equal, you're not just going to kind of sit on your laurels around that. You want to try and change things and make it better for everyone and try and make a fairer society. So being anti-racist is about deciding that racism is not okay and you want to do something about it. And it doesn't really matter whether, you know, that you don't believe it. It's the fact that you don't want anyone else to be acting in that way. And racism causes a lot of suffering, and it causes a lot of people, especially in rural areas, to isolate. They cut themselves off from the community because they feel unsafe. And what happens is, if you're not being, you know, if you are anti-racist, you can help those people who are suffering in silence by trying to change the environment around them so they can feel safe again.
How do we tackle racism? Is it about education, law, or our rights?
Good question. I think it's all those things, but I think, you know, people want a very simple way of dealing with a very complex problem. And I would say, you know, your initial starting point is to reflect on whether or not you're racist yourself. And if you're not, what you want to do about that. You believe that everyone deserves to be equal, but then how do you translate your belief into action in the world so that other people can live with the same rights that you deserve? And I think the best way of doing that is to talk to the people you know, is to examine your own unconscious bias. So if we want to talk about unconscious bias, what it means is, like, there's been studies that have been done on babies, and the evidence shows up around the 4 or 5 month old mark, babies start to prefer people who look like them. Because if, for me as an Indian baby, you know, brought up in an Indian household, at 4 or 5 months, I would have naturally felt more comfortable around Indian people than I would have around, say, white people. That doesn't mean that I don't like white people. It just means that I felt more safe and comfortable. And we see that happening in society. People naturally feel more at ease around people that they recognize or identify with. And that's understandable. You know, that's not racist. But what it can cause is, it can cause people to get into situations where they use their unconscious bias. For example, in recruitment, you know, if you're recruiting for a job and someone walks in and you feel more familiar with them, they've already got an edge and a kind of benefit, not a benefit, a kind of, you know, they've got an edge over other candidates possibly. So unconscious bias is about accepting that you have it, understanding that it's at play, and then questioning that in situations where it could have an impact on your interactions. Yeah.
Great stuff. And last question, what is the message to people of Somerset? What would you like to say? Because I do believe right now there's lots of people that are watching you, and if you've got one message to them, what would it be?
Educate yourself, you know, read about racism. What, you know, there's on our Facebook, we've got, and Mikhail could maybe send a link to it, but we've got a resource online now with loads of information and places you can go, and there's loads of stuff online. But there's also, you know, if you don't want to read something, watch something, listen to something, there's so much out there that you can educate yourself about racism, about unconscious bias, about the ways in which to tackle racism. So I'm not asking anyone to just walk out their door and start battling racism. You know, that you have to arm yourself with the information first, because it's tiring and you need to understand it. And, you know, if you do want to go out and make a difference, you know, I'd encourage you first of all to talk to your friends and family, look at the way you're bringing up your children. Are you teaching them about racism? Are you helping them understand that there should be equality and how to handle that? You know, there's lots of ways you can make a change without having to kind of, invest a huge amount of time. Like you can build it into your life very easily. And yeah, it's just about starting to learn and want to learn about it.
That's great. Thank you for being here with us tonight.
No, thank you for having me. You're doing great work. Thank you.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.
Okay, so that was Gurpreet from Black Lives Matter in the Sticks. Basically, her aim is to reach Black Lives Matter movements and all of those people who would like to learn, educate themselves and make a change in their local communities. She would like to reach them. So I hope you've been able to save her email address or Facebook page. There's no website so far. If not, I do encourage you to Google her Black Lives Matter in the Sticks. She's happy to provide support, and she would like to build that network across the whole UK. Okay, so 20 minutes left, more or less. And Ginny, have you got anything for us?
Yeah. So thank you ever so much for everybody who's sharing their contact details. A number of people have been in touch saying that they'd like to share them with all the individuals and with all the community organisations rather than the statutory organisations. So we'll do that afterwards. Somebody's asked Brenda's role at the council, and Brenda's a councillor at Somerset West and Taunton Council. Yeah, and just lots more thanks. Yeah, so anyway, carry on with the chat.
Great, thank you.
Everybody.
I do apologize, Brenda. I didn't notice. I didn't introduce you. I thought I took for granted that everyone knows you. You are so popular, at least in our community. Anyway, so now Jan. I'm happy that Jan decided to support us tonight. I know that Jan was with us in recent, he was observing and he was watching what we were doing in our recent events, like why I made Bridgwater my home, Somerset together, or Bridgwater together. But this time Jan decided to share his opinion, and I'm quite happy because of Jan. He would like to share his perception on racism from completely different angle. Hello, Jan.
Hello.
How are you tonight?
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay.
So yeah, Jan, I'm please correct me, but my understanding is that you would like to focus on something that we are missing. You not necessarily want to focus on the bad things, but something that it should be done in order to make that change. Is that right?
Yes, that's right. I want to focus on the fact that we also need to share love, to be conscious that it's not all about the different bad experience and what we see out there, which give us really make us afraid. We need to be able to share love, to transform ourselves, and to basically stand up for what we believe in, for the lives, notably Black Lives Matter. So basically, my name is Jan. I am originally from West Africa. I've lived in the US for 5 years and in the UK for more than 15 years now. Like many people of ethnic minority, I've experienced racism in my life or through other people's experience, and I condemn it in the strongest term possible. But you have got to ask yourself, how on earth could racism persist in this day and age? My first experience of racism was in the US, in a church which was almost full, but the space beside me was free. However, the family refused to sit near me while there was no more available space anywhere else. They decided to squeeze themselves up to a much smaller space further away. I was shocked, confused, and sad. I brushed it off, telling myself it was just a coincidence, but this situation happened several times. I also had a bad experience in a church here in the UK in Dorset. In the middle of each worship service, we shake hands. It is called Giving or Passing the Peace of Christ. But there was a lady who always avoided shaking my hands every single time. She has always turned away from me. Other than that, here in Bridgwater, I've been punched in the face and racially abused as I work in the security industry. I was gobsmacked as I thought the UK was better than that. But despite the progress against racism here, it is still an issue. I've also felt racism through other people's experience, notably through my sister living in France, who was looking for a job. Her mother-in-law, who is white, went to an office and has been told there was a job opening. When my sister showed up for some information, they simply told her, sorry, but there is no job available here. Again, there are countless stories of racism. And one that really hit me hard was about the Tulsa Race Massacre, also called the Black Wall Street Massacre in 1921, when an African-American wealthy town was burned down and some of its residents attacked and killed by a mob of deputized white residents armed with city officials in Greenwood district in Tulsa, Oklahoma. It has been called the single worst incident of racial violence in American history, all because of a false and baseless assault story. All of the stories we hear about racism make you angry, and you have the right to be angry, as I am sometimes. Everybody is different and express themselves differently. Some people show their anger in different ways by boycotting, demonstrating, rioting, etc. But we also need to show the other side of the coin. I have chosen to be free of anger and take life positively. I am living freely in my head, avoiding the bitterness of racism. People living with racism are not free, but bitter about life. They are living in a mental prison of their own. We are in this together, whether we want or not. Racism will not go away as some people choose to be racist. But we can all do our part, speak up and say something. Therefore, if someone is being racially abused, say something. If someone is hurt because of racial insults, say something. If someone is in need to talk after suffering racially, say something. No matter what, be courageous and say something. At the end, we are all human and in need of love from each other. So say something.
That's great, Jan. I like it, I must say. Great speech. And I do believe we need love. All of us deserve for love, respect, and dignity. Human dignity, it's something that we are missing these days, chasing better cars, better jobs, bigger houses, and we tend to forget that there's something like human dignity. But I do agree, we should focus on those universal values these days that we tend to forget about. So yes, thank you for saying something tonight, Jan. And I do appreciate. Okay, so if you remember Gurpreet from Black Lives Matter in the Sticks, she has mentioned when I've asked her what it could be done, what we should do in order to make some change, and she said, educate yourself. So that's why I would like to introduce you to Irena, because Irena, she would like to talk about education and what is wrong and what should be, where is the space for the improvement in terms of educating ourselves. Hello, Irena.
Hello, everybody. I'm going to try and share my screen, so I hope this works. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay, right, great. Yeah, my name's Irena, and Great evening, by the way. Thank you so much for sharing everything that I've heard this evening. Has been really illuminating. I have to say, there are some things, you know, you think these things aren't really happening out there, but it's lovely to hear them. Unfortunately, sad to hear these true stories, but really it's very difficult to know how to manage everything when you hear what people's personal reactions and people's personal experiences are. Yeah, I teach at Bridgwater and Taunton College, and my background is I'm half Italian and half Belarusian. I was born in the UK, and both of my parents, I remember as I was growing up, experienced quite bad times in terms of how they were treated by other people in their communities and in their workspaces. I worked in Hertfordshire for quite a long time in a college up there, and the types of students I was teaching in 16 to 18 brackets, they were very mixed in terms of their race and in terms of their background. And I think the way that a lot of our curriculum was also managed there gave a lot of scope to talking about how we can be more inclusive and more diverse. It was also different times there, because the words that you hear about how you can make people more appreciated and more inclusive, how you can make the curriculum more diverse, that was something, and more multicultural, that was something that people did naturally, I think, in those times. Since I moved to Somerset, I have to say I was quite shocked. First of all, by having groups of students where there were no really very great differences in their ethnic provenance. That really threw me, actually. I teach French, and so from my own subject, it was interesting that my subject deals quite a lot with both racism and difficult situations that people experience in France and French-speaking countries. So I found myself teaching about racism and about how difficult it could be. And I know sometimes today people have mentioned how you you might not get a job because your name doesn't fit. Well, I was teaching people about this. I was teaching young people about how in French football teams, how much they celebrated the fact that they had a diverse football team in the 90s. And this was hailed as truly groundbreaking stuff. And as the French state was actually really proud of it. I mean, whether, unfortunately, it didn't materialize into something which then changed people's points of view. So from my own subject, I knew what was going on, and I was able to teach it in a type of sociological sort of way. But then when you look around and see what's actually happening in other subjects and other subject areas, then it's quite different. And it's maybe not working in quite the way that I was expecting it to work. So because, as I've put on my slide, what does it actually mean? Are we looking at how a white way of life has dominated how and what we teach in our schools and in educational establishments? But recently we've had, of course, the Black Lives Movement, the BLM, and it's forced us really, all of us, to look really very carefully at what we're offering students. And a lot of educationalists, particularly at university level, have been looking at this for some time, but it hasn't really translated into what's happening in everyday situations. As has already been mentioned by a number of people tonight, we've been close to home. We've got the statue of Edward Colston. We watched it all being removed. We watched the new statue of the black woman activist go up in his place, which was then again removed. And I really felt that was a defining moment. And you see, nothing has replaced that statue as far as I know. And it's now as though it didn't happen. It's gone. So, as Andrew mentioned earlier on, these are all symbols of our colonial past, and they are everywhere when we look. From Edward Colston, and I was really struck last week. I was watching the last night of the proms, which happens every year in London, and there had been some issues about whether they would be singing Rule Britannia. They sang it in its entirety, and the BBC that was broadcasting it, you know, had to capitulate. I think there was an idea that it wouldn't happen, first of all, but it did. And I think you can probably see from my pictures in the past, when this event has been celebrated, it's been very multicultural. And, you know, even up until last year, when we were in the middle of the Brexit negotiations, European flags were there. People were flying flags from every nation in the world, as well as the Union Jack. But last night, the last night of the proms last week, it was only the Union Jack. So, you know, the great colonial thing was very much to the fore. And I really don't think it fits with the times that we're talking about when we're talking about Black Lives Matters and the colonial past. The two things just do not go together. Again, I'm mentioning stuff which has already come up this evening. So I think, you know, we need to be able to somehow kind of recast these symbols. They're there in history. You can't scrub them out and say they didn't happen. We're not starting from the year naught, as they have done in other civilizations. They're there, but somehow we've got to recast them, and we've got to make sure that they are appreciated for what they are. They're long gone, but now we need to put them in a different context. Again, someone else mentioned the Black History Month, which has always been in October. Apparently it started in 1987, which is quite, you know, not that long ago, really. But why do we have to have it in October? Why is it being taught in our curriculum all the way through the year? Why do we have to designate just 1 month when we get the pictures of Barack Obama and all those notable faces that you can see for you on the slide and more, who suddenly, you know, come to the fore? We don't talk about them at other times. So, you know, it does take time to actually decolonize the curriculum, because teachers are obviously in charge of what they teach in the classroom, but of course they're also required to teach according to a specification. And often what you'll find is, I think a lot of people have been commenting about how they'd like to go into schools and already doing work in schools to try and change people's perceptions. It does take time, and often you have to find that right teacher or that right group of teachers in an educational establishment who are prepared to take it forward. And say when they do, and say I experienced this myself as a teacher of French. I teach a text called Kif Kif Demain, which is about it's written actually by a young immigrant woman in France. She was born in France, but her parents were both from North Africa. She experiences, and her mother also experiences, huge amounts of racism, which are put in the book. And one of my students, who happened to be of Chinese background, found that it was the first, and she came and told me after a lesson, this was the first time that anyone had ever talked about how Chinese people can be treated in racist ways, because that's what was described in the book. And she felt a sense of relief that at least we could discuss it in class and, you know, help her come to terms with it. But we needed to take the next step, of course, and look at the positive sides of being a Chinese person or a Black person or person from BAME community. So yeah, BAME students and students of different ethnic backgrounds need to be recognised, you know, for what they are. And what we don't want is a picture of, oh yes, we'll talk about students, or we'll talk about people from different environments and from BAME environments, and then show that somehow they're not as good as other people. Sometimes they're always the underdog, and, you know, it takes like something special to happen before suddenly they become a leading light. And I'm just, you know, given the example of Nelson Mandela, who of course we know was in prison for his radical ideas and all his work against apartheid, and his very political work against apartheid in South Africa. And then years later, we celebrate him not for his radical ideas, but because he was president of South Africa, and you know, a brilliant job he did of taking that position, and great for everybody in South Africa at the time. In everybody's English GCSE exams, which so many young people have to take, there have been, of course, changes in what people are reading. So poets like Benjamin Zephaniah and the author Mallory Blackman have now been included. But seems that that isn't enough for some people, because they'll say, okay, we've included them, but then they turn back and say, well, we've included them, but are they actually too simplistic, and is it really exam material? So you always have these questions popping up when something different is then put onto the menu. And say, as GCSE and A-level teachers, we are all reliant on the specifications for each subject and the exam boards. And these specifications are created maybe perhaps every 5 years. The people who create them maybe are not from the most diverse communities either. So they wouldn't naturally reflect, you know, what they would see in society. And therefore they might not choose automatically examples from a diverse world. I'm sure it's a very difficult line to be following, but if you don't keep up with it, with what's going on in society, then the exams and what students are studying don't fit the times. So it is a big issue that has to be done. In higher education, of course, professors and lecturers they don't wait for somebody else to tell them what to teach. They have their own specialisms, and therefore they create their own curriculum, and they are in complete control of what can be taught. And many of them have taken the new stances on BLM and inclusivity, really taken it to heart. But unfortunately, as you can see on the cartoon, you know, some won't. And the reason being is because it's just taken them too long to perfect their own specialism, and they're going to find it very difficult to change their minds and do something different. And of course, it will also be up to the publishers who will want to publish the professor's work, and what the university is also prepared to go down the road with. So finally, you know, diversity is part of doing away with racism in education. People have said this tonight. So, you know, some of the words on my slide I noticed have just moved around. So apologies for that. The multicultural agenda is no longer a flavour of the month in these times, but we have to keep talking about diversity. And this, I think, goes hand in hand with racism, because if it's in education, it'll be in society, and we want a society that is as diverse, as inclusive as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Rena. That's really good. Thank you for your presentation and effort. Thank you for your contribution by all means.
Thank you.
Thank you once again. And I would like to come back to what Jan has mentioned about, and basically in Jan's statement, he has mentioned about that incident in church. And I think it's a great time to introduce Dr. Mohamed Musalone, because of he kindly agreed to talk about Islamic perspective on racism. Good evening, Dr. Musalone.
Hi, good evening. Is it possible to share my screen? Thank you so much. I know the time is a bit squeezed now, so I have been already deleting quite a few of my paragraphs. So to start my talk, I first say peace and blessings be upon you all. And this is the typical Islamic greeting. And this means that you and your property, your dignity and your honor is all safe from my end, is all sacred for me, is holy for me. Andrew and Jan was very, I enjoyed listening to you two, because almost Andrew summed up what I was going to say. I'm grateful to the organizers and the great event, and you all, the audiences and the attendants, for allowing me to express my thoughts and an Islamic aspect of the living in a diverse community. In fact, a healthy society is thrives on accepting the diversities and not on tolerating the differences. It's not a tolerance work, We use often the word tolerance. We should tolerate. No, we should accept. The Muslims from subcontinent of India, Bangladesh and Pakistan, and of course from Middle Eastern countries have made Somerset a little more colorful in the last 15-20 years. And the colorful, especially on the food front, where we all go dining, eating on the Indian takeaways and restaurants, and of course at the health front, because quite few subcontinent non-English or Indian Pakistanis and Africans, they are in the health group. Myself, to introduce myself, I'm one of the anesthetists in Musgrove Park Hospital, and I have been in Taunton with my family over the last 21 years, and I really enjoy the working in Musgrove Park and the society here. As Jan said, I liked it saying that we should share the good things as well, not only the bad things. And to my knowledge, in the last 21 years, I have enjoyed the society, I have enjoyed the neighborhood, and had no problem at all. That's my good luck, probably. Now, coming back to the topic, if you have watched the first slide of mine, few words which are prominently attracting us is the discrimination, prejudice, and hostility, racism, and black color, and etc., etc. The word race is desirable in a human life. We should have a race to compete with each other to get the best product, the best result, the best thing out of ourselves to make a race. But once we add an ISM, a suffix to the race, it becomes the ugly and the heavy part of the talk. One is ignored, one is opposed, one is marginalized, one is oppressed, suppressed, and one is belittled. One's efforts, achievements, and capabilities are ignored, not counted for, because one doesn't belong to a certain group or belong to a certain ethnicity. A group treats another group as inferior and thinks themselves a bit superior. It will be worth mentioning here the old caste system of India. BBC on 19th of June last year has given a very refreshing description of the system I was taught myself in school when I was in Kashmir. I'm originally from Tibet. I was born in Lhasa. I can't tell you my date of birth, but I'm pretty old. So from Tibet, after the Chinese came, we moved to India, we went to Kashmir. So in the last 50 years, I have changed few places. And I think this is the Somerset or Taunton is my home now because I have lived longest here. The Indian caste system in my books, in the history books, mentions that there's a book called Manu Smriti. Is an authoritative Hindu law book written almost 1,000 years before the birth of Jesus Christ, peace be upon him. And that book acknowledges and justifies the caste system as a basis of order and regularity of the Hindu society. And according to that book, the Hindu society has got 4 subgroups: Brahmins, the Kashtaris, the Vishyas, and the Shudras. And unfortunately, they have, unfortunately, the Brahmins do the intellectual work. They are priests, they are teachers. The Kshatriyas are the rulers and warriors. The Vishyas are the traders and farmers. And the Shudras do laborers' job. But unfortunately, the Dalit, the untouchable, the outcast one, they are only meant to clean the toilets and the streets of people, and they have to do it generation after generation. The system was totally unacceptable in the modern age. Why someone born as Dalit has to clean toilets and streets generation after generation? And why can't a laborer's children become a doctor or engineer or a teacher? Dr. Bhimrao Ramji Ambedkar, he was a Dalit man, untouchable man, and he campaigned against the untouchable law in India, in British India. This gentleman, he came to London School of Economics in 1920s, and he studied here law. But unfortunately, because he was short of money, he has to return back to India. This man, he has played a key role in the writing of the modern Indian constitution, the supreme law of India. There is some overlapping between the unacceptable system of caste and the racism of today. I see the racism is an international manifestation of the regional caste system. The issue of racism has been actually politicized as either end to benefit a certain group of people. Coming to the Islamic consideration of the problem. Coming to the Islamic consideration of the problem. The problem started when Iblis, the Satan, when he was asked by Lord Almighty to bow in front of Adam, peace be upon him, to honor his status, the Iblis or the Satan, he said, Ana khayrum minhu, Ana khayrum minhu. I can't bow in front of this man because I'm superior to him. In chemistry, my background is different. I can't bow in front of him. And Lord Almighty discharged him from his paradise as a punishment and humiliation. The Iblis, when he said, Ana khayrum minhu, I'm superior to that, it was purely based on his chemistry. He said, I'm made of fire. You made me out of fire. And this man you made out of mud. In the time of Muhammad, peace be upon him, the Arabs suffered the same complexity. The Arabs called the non-Arabs Ajam, unable to speak fluently, uncivilized. And we all see that even today, they are rich and they think the non-Arabs are inferior to themselves. Almighty Lord, He has said clearly in the Holy Quran, Ya ayyuhan nas, inna khalaqnakum min zakari wa unsa, which I'm reading the Arabic part. It means, oh people, we created you. Oh people, we created you from a man and a woman, then made you into tribes and clans, only to be identified. Indeed, in the eyes of your Lord, one who is the most God-fearing is the most honorable. This is what the Holy Quran says about that. And another thing, social inequality and racism-related troubles benefit group of people. It is the business of some people, and they never want the fire get completely extinguished. They want to keep the fire smoldering. There are people, they pay for keeping it smoldering. Social media is a very effective means for them. People easily get emotional and ready to take revenge advantage. Killing, burning, looting, everything takes place on absolutely unfounded news or posts with no knowledge where the news came from. Old videos and fake news readily available for those who want to add fuel to the fire. In the past 2 decades, we have witnessed wars, destruction of cities and countries, dislocation of millions of people, loss of lives of millions of innocents, floods of refugees coming across based upon hatred and fake news only. This is all we have seen in the last 2 decades. We make fun of people. Cut jokes on their lifestyle, belittle their civilization, dishonor their faith and religious belief, creating hatred and animosity, and we call it freedom of speech. We claim to understand every culture, every faith, every system around the world. We never bother if our misunderstanding harms or hurts people. In the farewell sermon of Prophet Muhammad, the year he was passing away, he passed away from the world. There was a big gathering in Mecca as part of Hajj. In that farewell speech, Prophet Muhammad says, "O people, your Lord is one. Your Lord is one. Your Father is one. Be mindful. Neither an Arab is superior to a non-Arab, nor a non-Arab is superior to an Arab. Neither a fair-skinned man is superior to a black man, nor a black man is superior to a fair-colored man, except on the basis of taqwa. And taqwa in Arabic means God consciousness. In the eyes of your Lord, one who is God-fearing is the most honorable. Islam has laws to offer the world to regain, re-establish the honor, the dignity, the brotherhood, the harmony we have lost, unfortunately. Having said that, many of us witness today the infighting among the Muslims, Muslim groups and countries, and if we critically analyze the facts, we will find a list of beneficiaries of these fights. And with every escalation of the suffering, there is escalation in the profits and the benefits of these beneficiaries. This is the time we all need to stand together to fight on a war footage against the racism, which is the root cause of discrimination, inequality, prejudice, hatred, and antagonism in our society. Myself, I came in '96 as a doctor trainee in UK, and I have gone through few of the special treatments from my colleagues. I remember those things, but because I was too dull, I didn't understand this was discrimination.
Great stuff, Mohammed. I'm conscious of the time.
End of my career. Thank you very much. I must say thank you to you all for the
Thank
chance you gave me present the Islamic solution of the problem. Thank you once again.
Thank you very much. Could you just answer for one question from your perspective as a Muslim person in Somerset? Do you know anything about the discrimination due to beliefs and faith?
Yes.
Is it a big problem or is it just random?
Yes. Well, as I said, I have been very lucky. My wife was the first lady in Thornton to have a headscarf, and Alhamdulillah, she never had a problem. But I have few friends here who has been subject to discrimination. Their ladies were spit upon their faces in nearby the town. Someone had abuse, and of course the local mosque we have in Thornton, occasionally we get a little stone coming through the windows and someone shouting at us.
Sorry to hear that. I hope it's not the case these days. Thank you once again for your contribution. I think it was a very interesting point. You approached the racism from a completely different angle. It's really informative. Thank you for that once again.
Thank you very much. Now.
Okay, so now it's time, last but not least, before we will go to any other business, I would like to introduce you to David, who is going to talk to us about racism and Romano Gypsy community. Hello, David.
Hello, evening all. Very, very interesting evening on Saturday night.
Sorry for keeping you long.
That's all right.
Okay, so Mike, it's yours.
Before I go into my story, I witnessed racism today. I took my car back for a service or a belated service and a valet at Taunton at 8 o'clock this morning. And I dropped the car off. I walked over to the Brewers Fair for breakfast. And lo and behold, there is an East European lady serving. Very, very nice, very polite, very nice lady. I've met her before. So I'm sat having my breakfast, and there's a very loud Birmingham accented family coming through, ordering their breakfast. Oh, but we like our tea out of pots, not out of a machine. And then the girl was reading off what she was giving out for breakfast. And they were saying, don't you people understand English before you come over here? Well, I'm afraid I got up and I left it and I walked out. I couldn't stand that anymore. But from my perspective, I am a Romany Gypsy heritage. My parents traveled the roads and byways, but settled down in the 1930s. So I've always lived the life of a house dweller, albeit a caravan for so many years, but ultimately a house. I did not realize I mean, we used to, at school, there wasn't too much prejudice, only from the teachers. I did find out, in actual fact, I passed my 11 plus, but it was deemed it would be better if I went to a secondary modern than somewhere like Dr. Morgan's or Hewish. And later on, the headmaster backed me all the way, but in later years, I went to the careers officer and he said, what would you like to do? I said, I would like to go into journalism. Oh, no, 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 he said. You'd be better off, he said, going into a garage as a mechanic. He said, that's the best you can hope for. That's ultimately what I did. But I did go and try and find my heritage, my roots. I went to the Hereford. I started working in Hereford in the hop country, in the hop yards in Hereford. And I found that up there, they were very, very more tolerant than Somerset. Because where I worked, there was Welsh, Gypsies, and Dudleys from Dudley. And they used to get on great in the evenings, sitting around the campfire. And if you wanted to stay there, you had to either sing, play an instrument, or become a storyteller. And I found that I was good at storytelling, creating stories. But roll on a bit now to 1970 when I got married and moved into Bridgwater. Not so much prejudice, harsh prejudice, but I was always known as Gypsy Joe. And all my life, I've had little innuendos. Even the Labour Party, I did have one sneering comments, but they're no longer members now, so we won't dwell on that one. But I used to find it very difficult trying to think as a Romany, but not having lived as a Romany. And even, I have been a county councillor since 1989. And in that time, I have received no prejudice except from one person. Every time he come near me, he used to go, oh, I can smell wood smoke. And I used to look upon that as a racist comment. But I managed to sort that out, not in an orthodox manner, but in a quiet chat behind the bike shed, if you know what I mean. No violent or no altercation, but I just said to him, look, you carry on like that, I will take you towards the, I will take you to the standards committee. And that was the end of that. I was also Sedgemoor District Council for 16 years. Brenda or somebody says something about diversity in Taunton Dean. Well, 8 years ago, I was on the Equalities Commission on Sedgemoor District Council, and we were looking at all these prejudices. We were looking at all these, making sure staff, making sure non-English, East Europeans, and what have you, were looked after, which we did. We actually did a good job there. I also remember that there was a case where a gypsy family was at a site and they were using the public swing. The children were using the swings and the slides. And the chairman of the parish council looked up and said, we must get those now disinfected before our children go on them. I mean, that is pure racism. And that's the kind of thing that I found all my life. I find it difficult to believe that, I mean, gypsies were in the Holocaust. They weren't even gassed. They were thrown into pits of burning petrol. They weren't even shot. They were just thrown into burning pits of petrol. And I find that's my heritage. And one day I would love to go to Poland, to Auschwitz, and stand there and acknowledge that my people died there. And I will do that one day. But I could talk long and hard, and I heard a lot here today. Black Lives Matters. I've said to Glenn Burrows, I don't go to those meetings because I see people there standing up saying Black Lives Matters, but I've also seen them because I was on planning for 12, 16 years at Sedgemoor. I've seen those same people come in and campaign against gypsy sites. So I won't go to these meetings because I know some of those people are there and I will not go with them. I think everybody's created equal. Black, white, green, blue or red. I used to work in a small shop in St. John Street in Bridgwater, a little small sweet shop come grocery. And I got to know the Asian and the Chinese community. And somebody mentioned about the Chinese community. I got to know them pretty well. And even now, as we talk, there's people there going in these Chinese shops going, yeah, ying tong, fried rice, yo. Yeah, this is racism. And people don't really know what they're saying. They just think they're being funny. They're not, they're being racist. And this goes, I'm trying to get my words out because I get so emotional about this. And maybe I need to write it down. But once upon a time at school, I remember somebody called me a chippo and I smacked him straight in the nose. I won't do that again because I had 3 weeks detention for that. Because the teacher was racist. He said, you know, gypsies don't hit ordinary house dwellers. Or I learned some of the language. Glenn and Dave, you're house mumpers. What you call house dwellers, what a house mumper. But I have no tolerance. I'm anti-racist. I have no tolerance for any form of racism. And I will either walk away. Once upon a time, I would have faced that, but now I will walk away. Otherwise, I will do something I bitterly regret.
That's great, Dave.
Sorry if I'm not coming very clear, but I just hate racism.
That's great. Thank you, Dave. I do appreciate your time, and I think it's really important to talk about Romano Gypsy community because quite often we are missing that point, and we tend to forget that there are all ways of discrimination towards those small communities in the UK. And thank you.
Can I just say I have to go in a moment. I'm entertaining some people that have done a charity walk for the memory walk today for the. So I will be going shortly to join them.
But by all means, thank you for your participation. Okay then, so as I've mentioned before, we will go to any other business. For the last time, I would like to ask Ginny to update us what was going on chat, and then I will ask Rob Brown from the police to talk a little bit. I will introduce Steve Clifton to say a few words about his past and perhaps upcoming projects. And you are more than welcome. Other people are also more than welcome to share your projects and initiatives and perhaps ideas, and you are more than welcome to share your opinions. Anyway, Ginny.
Thanks, Mahal. People have been thanking the speakers. I think people have really appreciated the really diverse range of speakers. I think Viv put it really well when she was saying that, you know, it's so interesting to hear all the different points of view and that it's so enriching. I think enriching, that's such an important term. In response to Irina, John shared Frantz Fanon and the Wretched of the Earth. And Andrew shared an interview with the Runnymede Trust researcher looking at empire and migration. People very much agreeing with Jan. And, oh, is it possible for Irina to share her presentation? We could share it for her on Facebook if that would be possible, or we could share it around the email group, which however she would be happy, if she would be happy to do that. One question I wanted to pose to everybody, we talk a lot about what time is good or what day is good for these kind of events. Could people share on the chat, perhaps? I know I'm asking a biased audience because we're all here for this time and day, etc. But if you could share what time and day, that would be really, really interesting. And last but not least, lots of people have contacted me privately and said on the chat too, just thank you so much to Mahal. You've done an amazing job tonight. You've pulled together such a brilliant range of diverse speakers and, you know, and kept everyone on track, and yeah, done an amazing job. Well done.
Thank you very much, but I must say that I wouldn't be able to do that without your help, Somerset Diverse Communities team and Bridgwater Together group. So thank you all guys for your support in order to organize this event. Okay, so as I've mentioned, please let me to introduce Rob Brown from police. I hope Rob will tell us a little bit about Hate Crime Awareness Week between 10 and 17th of October. I'm not sure whether Rob is able to do that, but by all means, hello Rob.
Hi, so thanks everyone. It's been a really sort of enjoyable evening, a long one, and I was only going to come along for sort of the final part, but I thought I'd come for the whole affair, and I'm glad I did. So a little bit about me. I've been a police officer now for 11 years. I started off in London, came down to Bristol, then slowly worked my way down to the south, and I'm currently in Wellington. So I part of my role in the neighbourhood team is being one of the leads covering hate crime. And looking to sort of expand on not just how we can support our victims of hate crime, but also how we can sort of improve our awareness as an organisation, and in particular with our teams in Somerset. So at the moment, I'm currently running a project called the Hate Crime Tactical Advisors. It's something we ran a couple of years ago under a different title, but due to staff movements, we've kind of lost a few of our workers and they've gone elsewhere. So I'm looking to reinvigorate the role, and it's kind of in some respects where you guys come in and have a part to play. There's only so much I can do, and as part of what I am trying to do is increase our sort of profile, different charities and organisations around Somerset, and use you guys really as speakers to my team and the wider teams, to explain sort of your involvement with ourselves as a police, how we can do things better. And to really do that, it's kind of it comes from your lived experiences and hearing examples from Fiona and Yanis and the likes. It's been quite humbling. Obviously, Michal, you mentioned about Hate Crime Awareness Week. It's a bit of a difficult one, really. We've got some bits and bobs planned, but COVID is unfortunately kind of putting a bit of a dampener on affairs. Historically, where we've been, we've gone to various different supermarkets, towns. We've had sort of pop-up shops where we've essentially just explained to people a bit more about hate crime, how those comments that are sometimes made in a pub, as Mr. Loveridge mentioned just now, how that actually can affect people, and that people do need to stand up and speak out. And that's kind of generally where we've been previously, but unfortunately, I think this year we may have to slightly tinker with things and maybe change the way in which we deliver. So again, from my perspective, I've included my email address in the list. If we can in any way give an input to any organisations you're aware of, any charities, any schools or whatnot, we've got Microsoft Teams, we've got Zoom now, we've got all these fantastic tools which we can use to actually spread that message, and explain why hate shouldn't be tolerated in any part of the world. I'd be lying to say that we've got it right all the time. We haven't, but as an organisation, and especially even in Somerset, we are trying really hard to make up for those historical issues in the past. So yeah, that's kind of a little bit about me really and what we're trying to work on. But really, the point of tonight for me was to sort of see if anyone's got any questions or any burning issues they wanted to raise that I might be able to answer. But if not, feel free. My details are in the chat thread. Drop me a line next week or give me an email, and I'll see how I can help out.
That's great, Rob. Thank you for that. Please keep an eye on chat. I do believe Rob in a minute he will leave his contact details over there. But I must say that a little bird told me that there's a huge chance that police will organize, regardless of COVID-19, they will organize a hate awareness week in October, but it's going to be digital. So please follow us. If we will find out something, we definitely will share the mission in order to let you know about it. And please let me introduce to Steve. Hello, Steve Clifton.
Yeah, right. Well, first of all, I'd like to congratulate you and Ginny for a really well presented evening. Fascinating speakers, a lot of diversity there, and lots of different strands touched upon. Very, very difficult to get into every single aspect of racism, really. Yeah, my background is that I'm getting on a bit now. I did 36 years in Thames Valley Police. I moved from Reading, Thames Valley, in January this year to Bridgwater, well, to Cannington, and my job within Thames Valley since about 1998 was Community and Race Relations Officer. In that time, I've worked in Pakistan, most countries in Europe, and on anti-racism projects. Police Against Prejudice on the NAPAT projects, I was a police advisor, and I've worked on forced marriage, etc., and honour issues out in Pakistan for Thames Valley Police. I've also worked in Hungary in the slums, visiting gypsy families where we self-funded through national teachers training, National Association of Traveller Teachers. For the last 14 years, I've worked specifically with travellers, Gypsy Roma travellers, and my grandmother was actually a Romany traveller as well. I lived in a trailer until I was 13 years of age, and so on. So it's funny that I went back to that near the end of my career with the police. I've worked for West Berkshire Council in all the schools, working with various families. I started, together with others, the Gay Pride in Reading, and the festivals that have been going on, Nagar Kirtan, which is a Sikh festival. I was chair of the Reading Racial Attacks Forum, which I started. It was my idea, together with the Racial Equality Council who came on board. And I've delivered lots of anti-racism training through Thames Valley Police. My big thing really tonight that I'd like to just quickly touch on is that I am a great believer in independent advisory groups. You may or may not have heard of this. These were started after Stephen Lawrence was killed in London, and they started very well, bringing various people from various communities, all ethnic minority communities and main communities of London together in different pockets to address various racial issues and other issues. But unfortunately, dare I say it, certain parts of the police in London didn't really take on board the views of the community. Now, that doesn't mean that members of the community join together with the police. It means they are critical friends, okay? And I started this in Thames Valley with the chief superintendent, and this was in and around 2000, the year 2000, after lots of preliminary stuff early on. And it's worked really well, and I'm still a member of that now, and I still advise the police and still go along to meetings in and around the Reading area, even though I'm based in Somerset. And it's working with the communities. So I started the Taxi Driver Association, working with the police to stop sieges of the police station when confusion reigned over people running off from not paying taxi fares, and predominantly most of the taxi drivers, for example, in Reading are from Pakistani community or other ethnic minorities, and I'm not sure about down this way. Now, I don't know Somerset very well, but I've already experienced racism in my little village when we've had a group of mainly African people walking around the village, working with various things going on over the last few days, actually. Great Ormond Street, they were knocking on people's doors, talking, trying to highlight Great Ormond Street, children. And it was just the comments on the local sites that have been mentioned about who have been calling on them. No, nothing specific, but you get the undertones. I've investigated thousands of racist incidents, homophobic incidents, etc. And my claim, I'd like to say my claim to fame, to work more recently going on to the traveller families. I've been an advocate for traveller families in child protection cases as a volunteer. This was not part of my role for the council, working in children's services, but I chose to do that, and I've been successful on reuniting families back together who have been distanced. And as you may or may not know, many males from the ethnic minority communities do not want to speak up. They push the women forward, but they often don't want to speak up, or they haven't got the confidence to do that. And I believe that is obviously to do with, just finishing off, Maslow's hierarchy, the thing of hierarchy is prominent in many ethnic minority communities who come to this country in recent times. We're not talking about people who've lived here from the 1960s. I know hundreds of Pakistanis from then. They were British soldiers fighting for the English in the last two world wars. Not talking about those people, I'm talking about new arrivals. So new arrivals often have no way of communicating with the majority of people they come, where they live. They move into a community and they're not told about putting the bins out, for example. They're not told about anything really. So there's an education needed to help people who move in. We're talking about recent arrivals, okay? And I was part of the asylum seeker team in Reading as well. So, and I've been through that, and the full circle has come through it round and round and round and round. But so many truths were spoken tonight. But I just feel that people need to go up that level on, Maslow's pyramid. They need to climb it. They need to have self-confidence. In order to do that, people need to have trust. And if you're working in any community, you've got to know the communities. And I've spoke to women's groups in Reading quite recently, not picking on ladies particularly, but a particular ladies group, and they've never met. They live in Reading, which is like such a massive multicultural area, and they've never met in friendship a person from an ethnic minority. And these are people in their 60s and 70 years of age, and this is in Reading. So in Somerset, where minority people are not seen around a lot, they when they are seen, there can sometimes be a fear.
Yeah,
on both sides.
Yes, Simon, I can hear what you are trying to say. It's really interesting, and I must say that it's something that we should try to change, and therefore I do encourage all of you to check our website regularly, because we try to change that status quo. And for example, let me mention just about one current project that we have, which is called the Language Connect, coordinated by my colleague Jasna, and we try to make that friendship with native speakers, because quite often we've had on a number of occasions that perhaps the migrants who has been living here for 10, 12, 15 years, they haven't got a single English friend. So it's really important, and it's really helpful, and we can tell how they change, how they feel empowered and more confident having someone there. And it's just a matter of phone call once per week, and even if they are not sure about the system, they know that they've got someone that they can ring, pick the phone and find out. And obviously by doing that, they also practice English, which is really important. Thank you, Steve, for that. And that's it. I hope you enjoyed so far, and I hope that energy which was created tonight won't disappear. So I'm hoping you exchange your contact details, and you will leave this meeting tonight inspired, and now you know how many of us are here who would like to cooperate, who would like to make some changes in our community. So please contact us, contact each other, let us know about your ideas, let us know about the future initiatives and projects. By all means, we would like to support you. If we can promote that on our website or on our Facebook page, or support you in writing an application to apply for some grant in order to achieve your aim, please do not hesitate to contact us. And I think, I'm not sure whether I remember that properly, but a wiser person than I, a wise man once said, we don't need more rules, more rights, tougher sentences, deeper education. We need to be human and recall the universal values, love, empathy, and human dignity. And I think it's all about what we need. If we've got those values, then we don't need to worry about the other stuff. But let me to, that's the, and for the last presentation, we've got a star who's waiting for to perform. Let me to introduce a great star of Sedgemoor, Brian Smedley.
It was a great surprise to be told halfway through this evening that you'd like me to play the ukulele. But as it happened,
yeah, we like to surprise you.
During the evening, and I'm quite happy to do that. I was going to play some bluegrass ukulele. As you know, it's a bottle of Matthias Rosé. The ukulele was a Portuguese instrument, of course, you know that. It was taken to Hawaii by the Portuguese. I'm going to play a medley of 3 songs, which I've just written myself. 2 of them are American, one of them's Irish, and the other's my own. The first one, I'll just play them as I go now, and then you can drift off slowly into the night, right? That's about as much as I can play tonight. Thank you very much.
Well done. Thank you, guys. Thank you, everyone, for being with us. And once again, please be in touch. Don't waste that enthusiasm that I'm hoping it was creating tonight. Unless there's anyone else who would like to say something, I wish you a good night. Stay safe. Have a lovely evening and weekend. Goodbye, guys.